much indeed, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have this evening Laurence Reed, who's Executive Director from Europa Metals.
Good evening. Thank you for coming along tonight. Lead, zinc, silver asset in Spain. We only have one real objective this year, and that's, is our project, the Toral project in Spain, can it be an economically viable mine? That's it. We're going to be doing some other things, but all I care about is by the end of this year that we have an independent scoping study on this project which tells us what the viable economics are. And I'm not talking about the viable economics at this wonderful, yes, soaring zinc price. I'm talking about long-term, robust, viable economics. Let's park that for a moment though, because this is I'm a bit nervous. This is the first presentation we've done as Europa Metals. We've done a name change. An old mentor of mine, he was a journalist, used to sit there with a gin and tonic and a fag and say, Laurence, if a mining company changes its name, I'm going to look them up, and I'm going to check they're doing real work, and if they're not, I'm going to have them. Okay. But let's just part the name change and all of this. I've just come from a specialist mining conference this morning. Good projects will always be good projects. Bad projects with dodgy economics will never work, even with high metals prices. So I want to talk to you a bit about mining investment actually as potentially a generalist audience, because when I invest in things, I'm not looking at a soaring commodities price, I'm looking at management, I'm looking very specifically about where the project is, what the forward plan is, and things like what are the concentrates, what are they actually going to be selling? Because the thing is, this is a generalist conference, and when I saw the other speakers, there's no other mining companies. I looked at all these grown-up sectors like life sciences and property and technology. And I'm not just being sycophantic to the other speakers, but we just saw Net Scientific speak, and I'd like to speak to that if that's right. Thank you, I really enjoyed that. Incubation, deploying capital through expertise, putting in that oversight of people who have done projects before, the right people, and guiding projects through to where they actually nearly be to realise outcomes. People always group mining and oil and gas together. It's rubbish. I've done quite a bit of oil and gas. I've advised on quite a few oil and gas projects. I'm sure some of you are oil and gas investors in the majors. And if you open up an oil and gas annual report, or if you go to one of the big invite-only oil and gas conferences, everyone's talking about exploration, everyone's planning, everyone's looking to the future. It's not a series of companies standing up saying my project's better than your project's. It's a series of companies saying here are the challenges for the future in terms of resources and reserves and exploration spend. Mining is not that. Mining is broken. Malcolm, if you don't mind, but we were talking, we both, Malcolm was a director of a company which I used to advise, and we were talking before the conference about holding our heads in our hands at one point with a mining company we were both involved on, and 6 months later we'd sold the asset for $806 million. But that's a problem. It's not necessarily a good thing. And to come back to the mining investment conference that I was at this morning, you have these slingshot valuations. 1 minute you're nothing, next minute you're 10, 20 times, because there is not a lot of forward planning. This is probably very crass, but I just wanted to speak some things which I'm interested in while I'm still in mining. But you know, it's possibly like Apple having made successfully a series of beige-looking computers for the desktop, then waiting for a series of people in garages to do injection moulding coloured frames for PCs or to design the iPhone. You know, mining companies tend to buy when everything's very expensive and then sell when everything's going down to the toilet. And you can look at the majors and you can look at this horrific period in a mining downturn, which I think is pretty much over, in terms of change at senior management and the amount of assets that were brought to the top of the market and then were divested down. And that's fascinating because mining exploration really is broken. That's why there are a lot of exploration companies, but it's also why a lot of money is wasted. And I actually think our company is good because we've had a major turnaround. We understand one single asset extremely well. But this isn't about our company was brilliant and therefore you should invest in it because it's better than the others. Toral, our main asset, was part of the problem. So I haven't really done that very well. Never mind, next time. Case study. Look at the ROT, not the Excel spreadsheet. This is the Excel spreadsheet. This asset went from person to person to person, to company and company in Spain. And people would hand around the Excel spreadsheet and they'd hand around 10 pictures. And they'd look at the 10 pictures and go, I'm not sure about that. Or it could be like this, but we're going to have to drill it out. And again, and I started being involved in this asset and I vended it in to what's now Europa. We kept asking the question, well, there's so much data here, there's so much previous history there, surely we can do some of that. Surely there's an immense amount of work to be, no, you're going to have to re-drill it, you're going to have to redo it, it could be this, it could be that. And Europa had a major change, it had a major board change, and Miles Campion joined me on the board as executive directors, previously Barcap. Previously, well, he discovered a couple of nickel mines, quite famous ones in Australia, and he was head of the Oceanic Fund out of Australia, which was extremely successful. The first thing we did was say, well, where is all the rock for this asset? Oh, it doesn't exist, or it might be in this core shed down in the south of Spain. And Spain, for a long time, it was mandatory that you had to hand over your core, which is the rock inside the drilling. So literally, when people are talking about core, it's the sort of the stuff in the straw. When we put drills down, then we look at the intersections. And the first thing we did is we got in the car and we travelled to this core shed. We didn't know what to expect. We thought it might actually be just a couple of people with a tray full of gravel, you know, in a wobbly corrugated iron shed. And we found that is our core. So suddenly, from being this series of bits of paper that people don't really understand from a long time ago, we have the best part of majority of the 41,000 metres of drilling previously conducted over a series of campaigns. And not only that, is that when we looked at it further, we realised that a lot of that information had not necessarily been correctly put into the data sets, i.e. the Excel spreadsheet. But you shouldn't take our word for it. And what we did is we brought in independent consultants. So, bit of jargon, I'm sorry if you guys know this, but we're also ASX listed, JORC 2012 Resource. That's effectively bringing in an independent auditor to go through your information, and they make an assessment to certain standards to say what you have. So we brought one of these auditors in. And we work with them very closely. And sorry, just to give you an idea, 40,000 metres plus of drilling, this whole series of really good drilling campaigns, including by Lundin in Spain. And that's Miles and I at the core shed. We found this, not in the Excel spreadsheet, that's silver. So suddenly, not only is not everything logged perhaps correctly or accurately, we've actually found a silver credit, which is hugely important when you're talking about lead zinc projects, because lead zinc projects with silver credit suddenly become really interesting in terms of economics. And again, I come back to, can it work as a mine? And we did all sorts of things. It was a hell of a year last year, I'll be honest with you. We changed an awful lot of the board. We brought on a new chairman, Colin Bird, who I've known for a while. Colin has successfully built projects and he's successfully sold assets. I've also been involved in selling assets successfully with a couple of projects, but we wanted that kind of transactional expertise, but with people who really understood about how do you actually build a mine which will work. Brought in the independent consultants, went through the core lobby. It's really boring. This isn't going to be a story of we drilled and drilled and drilled and it's going to be fabulous and this year we're going to be drilling lots more. We will be drilling something. That's not what this is about. This is painstaking analysis about, can this be developed into an economically viable mine for a long time, not with zinc prices at where they are now. And we came up with this. And this for us is hugely exciting. This was literally the first look of what our project is. So this is Toral, that's the top of the hill there. This is high grade and the high grade zone. down into the centre, and you're educated people, you can work out the rest yourself. But we were going to be looking very closely at the scoping study in the economics, okay, of this area. And let's come back to why mining's broken. There's a couple of projects I can think of, one particularly in Africa, where they spent enormous amounts of money on looking about how it would work, but it was always, let's mine all of it, in a sense, and no proper grade control or understanding of a big picture approach, a big company approach, if you like, rather than let's be interesting, let's look at this in a considered manner about what can be scalable and what can be achievable in terms of actually bringing a project into production. So things we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at metallurgical testing into the middle to look at separation characteristics and concentrate. In terms of what are we actually going to sell? How can it be separated? And then vending it back into the scoping study to look at the economic model. So by the end of the year, we will have the first results on all the economics that you will all recognise whatever the business is. And we'll need to do more work, we'll need to do a proper feasibility study, but we think there's a good chance this could be developed into a mine with strong economics in the near term. And that's what makes this different from a lot of projects, no matter what the commodity. But let's just go back to this whole price cycles. Zinc's having a great run, and I've got so much stuff on zinc, it's not true, from the CRU and the rest of it, but none of it is going into this presentation because you can do your own research. And if you're like me, when I invest in a resources company, I go and do my own metals research, and there's a ton of stuff out there, and I go and do my own peer group comparisons. But don't invest in Europa or anyone else just because you think the zinc price is high. This morning, one of the biggest investors in the world in mining was talking about this exact subject. And he was saying it's very much about the projects. Look at the amount of money that was wasted during the uranium boom. Okay, in terms of suddenly all these guys came out from nowhere who didn't even know how to spell uranium. And the uranium boom happened and perhaps 2 projects worked. Rare earths, exactly the same. When the rare earths, heavy, light rare earths, etc., when that boom was happening, suddenly all these exploration companies pop up. A fraction of them, I think one of them actually made it into economic production. What it's about is looking at the specific projects and specific economics as you would any other project. So here are some peers. So here are some lead zinc. I can't talk about them because I'm ASX listed. I've got a higher burden of regulation than the name company. But if you are interested in this space, go and look at them. Central Asia Metals, really interesting. Really interesting to look at the grade and the resource. It's quite like ours, and it's in production. And have a look at the transaction value that they made recently over their lead zinc assets. And have a look at the rest of the projects. And when you're looking at them, very simply, have a look at the share price down here. Look at the tonnes. So this is our Maiden JORC Resource, announced beginning of this year. 60 million tonnes, 6.9% zinc equivalent, 25 grams per tonne silver. That's for starters. And all I'd say is just go and have a look at those numbers and the contained metals, and go and have a look at some other lead zinc companies. And I think we're in a fantastic position. Our share price is the lowest of the lot. Are we undervalued? No. The arrogance of that statement, I always get asked, do you think you're undervalued? Well, no, actually. And I think we've been a turnaround story. There's legacy, there's uncertainty, as there always is around mining. And I think over the course of the year, by continuing to do good work and having tight cost control, and actually looking at this like a business rather than a football pitch, which is our own personal playground to sort of satisfy academic ideas of what the mineralogy might look like, I think that will lead to true value. And we respect and love our investors, but you're only one audience. We have 2 audiences. We have you guys, quite rightly, but we also have trade and industry who, frankly, we're talking to and we've already conducted site visits with. And again, those are the people who we're having these conversations with, because there are very few projects at this time in lead zinc and with precious metals credits, I think, of that quality in a politically stable region near infrastructure. The support we've had in Spain has been fantastic from the DG of Castilla and Leon. It's one of the reasons why we're continuing to do this. It's a great district. Spain's opening up. We're right next to rail We're right next to road. We're near power. But I want to show you this. If I was investing in Spain, I'd be worrying about permitting and licensing. And I do worry about permitting and licensing because Spain has a history of being difficult. Spain's opening up now, a lot more investment projects getting done. I would also say that companies that have operated in Spain in the past in the junior sector have not done it well and have assumed that, well, we can operate like this in this country, so therefore the same must be true of Spain. And they spend 8 years sitting there not getting anything done because they will not adapt to, frankly, the cultural mores of the country. But this is what I will show you. This is Toral. This is our project. This is the Antonina mine. That's a lead zinc mine. We're looking very closely at that at the moment. We'll be announcing news on that in terms of having a look about how that used to produce. This is interesting. I'm sorry you can't really see it. This is a tailings dump. So this is where waste is put. Tailings management is the big issue in mining. Tailings dumps and water in 2018, no matter what the project is around the world. Water and tailings. That's the historic tailings dump, and that mud, it's not very exciting, but it is mining, you were warned, is active tailings, which is coming from a quarry. So this is a highly industrialised area. Permitting and licensing will always be one of my priorities, and it will always worry me, and we will work hard at it, just like many other companies have. But this gives me an awful lot of comfort in terms of this was a mining region, previously active, and the DG wants to restart a major mining operation. We've pretty much already talked about this. High-grade core in the middle. Scoping study this year. Something that's interesting, again, Graham earlier warned me not to talk too much to the slide, but top of the hill. When we're looking at mining scenarios, we're obviously going to be looking at mining from the side of the hill. So we're not mining a central shaft all the way down, probably. We're going to be mining in probably from the side, looking at a 250, 300 metre egress point straight into the high-grade area. So again, when we're looking at our scoping study and our economics, that suddenly makes it interesting. Central shafts are the death of mining projects, as well as not getting your tailings licence. You can look at this on the website. I wanted to have it up there, detailed version of the resource. We'll probably be updating that, all done by an independent, Addison Mining Services, independent JORC compiler and consultant. That's this year. Network in the middle. Concentrate, what is the product going to look like? What do the economics look like? Scoping study, I've talked about that too much already. Strike extension. We are going to be doing some drilling, but we're not pincushing it. All we want to do is get an idea that this mineralisation, which there's projects over here, okay, continues down here. We don't need to drill and drill and drill. As investors, you already have over 40,000 metres of drilling already conducted on this project. You already have a Maiden JORC Resource just from our first pass, which stacks up against most of our lead zinc peers. It's standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're focused, and we've already gone basically through this company in terms of cost controls, and it's all very well documented on what we've done in terms of cutting down the costs. And we have a team now, we have a history not working in the majors and then coming to a small asset and suddenly wondering where all the money's gone. We have a team who have successfully built, sold, transacted on major projects and made money for them as well, because we're treating this as a business. So that's my Manchester disclaimer. I just thought I'd put this in for fun. The last time I was here in Manchester, I had a drink with my cousin Tom, who told me Manchester was changing. I took a picture, he tweeted it, and ended up in the Manchester Evening News. So I hope I don't do that again for the wrong reasons. But that's Europa Metals. Thank you.
Laurence, thank you very much. Lovely. Do you have any questions for Laurence, please? Chris? Come on, fasten your feet, man. Come on. With a hand up? Back, Chris, back there, the gentleman there. Sorry. I'll come to you next.
Hi, Laurence. You rightly identified that the difficult bit of all junior mining companies is moving from finding the stuff in the ground and fully developing it with either a JV partner or selling the asset. And many companies have come to grief in that process, like 95% of them. I'm just wondering what you think is different about Europa Metals and the team that you have that's going to enable you to bridge that gap between those two very important points.
We're doing metallurgy, and we're looking at what the final product's going to be. Now, I know that's a short and glib answer, but probably won't name names, but West African Gold Company drills and drills and drills and drills through the boom, gets offered a price at around £1. They turn it down. Life moves on, but when it actually comes to building that project, it's all refractory. I have the benefit of having learnt from people who have built mines with previous jobs, and there's one up in North America. And one of the first things they did on their VMS project was met and having a look at the concentrate and having a look at the metallurgy. I think life has changed. I mean, if I can jump around, copper was being talked about a lot over the last 2 days, the investment conference. People were talking about like, there's not a lot of 1% copper left. You know, everything's getting more difficult. So suddenly I think we're entering a time where if you're investing, look at managements who are actually looking at what the product's going to be at the beginning. You know, there's no point buying the shiny car without knowing what the engine looks like and checking the oil first. I also think experience and track record in actually successful transacting projects. Miles has been involved in a number of highly successful transactions. Colin Bird has as well. Kawara, I think, was the most famous. I was involved in teams which did London Mining's Brazil sale for 806 million, and the Zamin sale of an asset to ENRC to 1.1 billion, and a transaction with Goldfields. I don't want to waffle on, but I might just touch on the last one, which was comes back to our two audiences. And I often get asked, well, why would a major buy your asset with your share price like that? And I had a conversation with a major once and asked them the question, and they said, because we can't be bothered. We don't want to get involved in AIM equity. We don't want to get involved in TS equity. The acquisition cost of the asset is one refrigeration unit if we turn this into a mine. So for all the pain and grief that involves taking over an AIM company and all the other stuff, we're just happy to get our own valuation on it and buy the asset out. And understanding that as a management, I think, is one of the key elements. That's right, I'm waffling.
I had a question towards the front here. Let me give you this one. Excuse me.
Thank you very much, Laurence. First of all, you say there was some doubt about the analysis of the cores samples you've taken. I'm just curious, because I used to work at a mine that produced lead, zinc, silver and cadmium. I just wondered whether you're satisfied there's no cadmium in this mine.
You can see our full list of, in terms of deterious deficits, I think we're quite happy. There's no real issues we have at this time with the core. I think it was previously when people were looking at the Excel spreadsheets. Right. But you're right, credits and penalties, nothing terrifies me like somebody who said, I've got a fantastic polymetallic resource. Because it's like, well, that's probably because it's been recycled 5 times because it costs 7 times as much to separate everything at the beginning. At the moment, in terms of various penalties, I'm very happy where we are, but we're going to be doing MET. Can I show you something? I'm sorry, can I have the presentation back? Look, in the last part of the presentation, you would have seen pulps, which I'm sorry to do that to you. Thank you, Tech. Sorry, that's very boring. Right. You used to work on a lead zinc mine. So what we also found when we went down to the core shed was that, so they've obviously done a whole series of MET pulping work. So that's one of the reasons why we've got quite a lot of surety on what we think is there in terms of final smelting product. But we need to do it ourselves. But we found boxes of that. We aren't happy. We need to do it ourselves, is the answer, in terms of actually finding all the data to the level that we'd be satisfied with. We haven't got that. but we're very happy to pay to do that, if that makes sense.
Have you worked out the cost of putting a smelter on the site?
Well, why would we in Spain? Because we're within reach by road of a smelter. So,
By road?
yes,
Right.
that is a possibility, but this is one of the joys of this project. I don't want to talk too much about that, but there are smelters in Spain, there are smelters in Portugal. And what we really like about this project is you're not replicating infrastructure like in other parts of the world.
But does the ore not require crushing and treating before it goes to a smelter?
Let's wait and find out with the scoping study. In terms of mineralogy, in terms of having a look at the met, this will all be coming out. But it's a proven region. You've got to remember the reason why there's smelters there for zinc is because there's already been production there. When I talked about the Antonina mine and why we're looking at that, we're having a look at the separation characteristics of that as well. At the moment, we're quite happy. But until we have our own results, I'm not going to talk about that in detail.
Right. So the other smelters that are in existence, what kind of purity do they have?
Publicly disclosed, I'm going to leave that question. I'm sorry, I'm going to be deliberately evasive of that. The northern smelter is owned by a very large metals company, and I'm probably not going to comment on that. But what I can say is if you have a look at where they get their inputs from, which are public knowledge, right, you can go and look at that, and you can go and look at what the production profile of those assets are.
Right.
I have to interrupt as we are
Sorry.
out of time. But I just wanted to say, actually, though, we did have a question at the back as well, just to give a chance, because we're waiting very patiently for one further question.
Hello, Laurence. Big fan of yours, seen all your podcasts and listened to them. Just want to ask you, I mean, you don't think you're undervalued at all, but don't you think you're like undervalued in comparison to the other companies? Just to rephrase it.
It's not my job to talk about whether I'm undervalued or not. Okay. I actually think the market's efficient, and I hate mining companies and exploration companies who stand up and say that they're undervalued. Okay. If I'm frustrated, I need to be doing more of this, I'm doing the wrong work, or I'm in the wrong place, or I need to build my credibility up, or I need to leave the board and replace myself with somebody else. I mean, I'll be frank with you. I don't want to see another mining CEO talking about valuation. It's been a major period of change. Okay, so I understand the valuation. And I can bitch and moan, frankly, about, well, I look at my resource and I compare it to X, Y, and Z, and mine's brilliant, which it is. But that's not the point, because I think the market is efficient, and I think that valuation will be reflected with time, because I've got my two audiences. And if I'm talking to one audience who I took to site recently, who just burst out laughing and says, aren't the markets ridiculous? Look at where you've got. If you floated this, you floated it for X and Y. I think the market over time, that will be recognised.
Okay, Laurence, thank you very much indeed.